Well, hello and welcome to PM Express. NPP Manifesto, and we're looking, is it feasible? NPP have come up with an elaborate plans of what they would give to the country if ever they are given the mandate to rule. And we're here to start interrogating it. And I'm sure it's one of many series to find out if indeed it's feasible. This is just a matter of just somebody's good intentions or they're practical. Let me just give you a little gist. Number one, reducing corporate tax from 20%, 25% to 20%. Removing import duties on raw materials and machinery for production within the context of ECOWAS Common External Tariff and Protocol. Abolishing the special import levy. Abolishing the 17.5 VAT on imported medicine not produced in the country. Abolishing the 17.5 VAT on financial services, abolishing 5% VAT on real estate sales, abolishing 17.5 VAT on domestic airline tickets, reducing VAT for micro and small enterprises from current 17.5 to 3%, introducing tax credits and other incentives for businesses that hire young graduates from tertiary institutions. Reviewing withholding tax imposed on various sectors, including the mining sector. These are all things that they are giving. Folks, my name is Nana Sakwa, the fourth Akwamu Edumasahini, and your host here on PM Express. When I come back, I will introduce my guest and find out that after they have given all this money out, what will be left to govern the state. Don't move. Thank you very much for staying. NPP Manifesto, is it feasible? I guess if you are an NPP member, you say yes, and then if you are NDC, you say no, and then probably if you are somewhere, you say maybe. But maybe by the end of this conversation, you may be able to read through the lines and find out what the actual fact is. Sitting right next to me as one of my favorite politicians, Kweku Kwatin, who's a Honorable Member of Parliament for Obuasi West, and also Member of Parliament Finance Committee. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Good. And then there is Frederick Jaku Odro, whom we have to charge Ambantemunsa. That's the custom. Those who appear on the show first, they're Ambantemunsa. So my viewers and I will charge you Ambantemunsa for appearing first on the show. But you're very much welcome, and he's a governance analyst. But what are you attached to any group company?
Well, I'm working with the Institute of Local Government Studies, and I'm the head of department for Department of Urban and Environmental Management.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Oh, good. So, you know, he's very much qualified to be on the show to educate us. So definitely I'll be talking to him about the social aspect of the manifesto to find out what will happen in Kweku. Since Kweku loves the numbers, we'll be talking more about the economy with him. But before I even start, Kweku, when you did the redenomination thing, you haven't accounted to the state what happened. The president was saying that when you guys were leaving after changing the 50 CD note or something, you did not budget or give us an account or something like that. So what's going on there?
No, I was surprised to hear that from the president. It's one of the things that give me the impression that the president's back is really to the wall. That Dr. Bawumia was the deputy governor of an institution such as the Bank of Ghana. And we are unable to get the accounting of an exercise, such an important national exercise that took place in 2007.
It's just they've been asking and you will not give them
but
the
who
figure?
Should answer that question? Is it the institution that the president is seeking to say that the records are not at the Bank of Ghana, that somehow he's not calling on even the governor at the time. He's calling on the deputy governor at the time. I think it was embarrassing. The president should not get into these things. If he wants to know how much the redenomination cost, he must go to the institution. There are people who head that institution. If they tell him that we don't have those records, and it will be embarrassing for us to say that we do not have the records of the redenomination exercise we did as a country. Now, if it turns out that the records are not there and he feels like asking anybody, he should ask the governor at the time. To come low and ask the deputy governor, I think it's embarrassing. I think the president...
No, but the deputy governor is quite influential. I mean, you know, it's in the public space, is influential, so
I honestly think that the president should not get into this kind of game. He's a contestant in an election, but he's the president. You want to speak of him in pleasant terms, and to degenerate into this kind of debate is just not right. I think if the president is minded to really want this kind of information, it's been there, he should go to the Bank of Ghana and ask. If he's minded to ask anybody other than the current institution, if the impression he wants to give to the outside world that in Ghana, when people head institutions and they leave, they take the records away and that the institutions have no records, he must say so. The president will be proud to lead a country like that. Is it the impression he wants to give to the outside world? I think that the president back is to the wall. He has seen the things, I'll conclude now, he has seen the things Dr. Bawumia has been saying. He said all kinds of things about Dr. Bawumia, including telling him that if you are not the president, you wouldn't know, you are not in a position to tell me that I'm not performing well. He said all kinds of things about Dr. It is because increasingly, Dr. Bawumia has become such a personality. He has displayed such a quick understanding of our economy and proposed solutions that if the president was minded, he would take on board and use it to correct the problems we're facing in this country. He doesn't want to do that. At this point, President Mahama's concern is how he will hang on to power. It doesn't matter if the economy continues to deteriorate.
Let's keep on to this one. But this was just by the way.
Yeah, it's by the way. But I just want to conclude on the point that if the president sincerely and honestly wants the accounting of the redenomination exercise, he should go to the Bank of Ghana.
I hear. Okay, so on that note, then I'll go straight to Frederick Ejako. Frederick, you are in governance. There's one thing which we have adopted in this side of the world, that everything has to be free. School uniforms have to be free, attendance of school have to be free. But in other parts, they seem to segregate, and then those who can't afford get it free, and those who can afford pay for it. So therefore, there's not too much burden, on governance. I was doing some, demography about, statistics, and you realize that they just everybody is such like, it's a charity. We've all become a charity case. How do you sustain it? Free school, free uniform, nurses will get their money, teachers will get their money. Everybody, come. Is it sustainable? And how do you manage governance like that? Let's take break it up for me.
Yeah. I look at it from several dimensions. Even in the most advanced economies, you find some level of state support.
Sure.
It could be housing, it could be even in education.
Unemployment.
Even in schools, if you take a place like UK, there are schools, they give this kind of, what we have in Ghana, we call our school feeding program. They also have their school feeding program. Those who can afford pay, but those who cannot. The essence of the whole process is that there must be some level of mean testing. My worry is with the system we operate in our country is that we don't have a lot of means testing in the system. But then let's take school feeding, for instance. I find it an important intervention that we should have. You'll be surprised that a lot of people cannot afford one good meal in a day.
Yeah.
And sometimes I get worried when politicians or some politicians talk about, let's take it to rural environment. You'll be shocked as to the level of urban poverty we have in this country. So some of these interventions are very relevant. There are others that I have my doubts about, whether they are just political gimmicks. But by and large, there are key social interventions that are needed in every economy, more so in ours, where we know that the level of poverty a bit high. So yes, we need some free stuff, but then what's the basis for giving out to, and what is the criteria for selection? These are the key things that I think we should look at. But as for those things, even in the most, if you go to the most capitalist societies, like the US and the rest, they give support to the most needy in the society.
No, I'm not against social intervention at all. I mean, I'm a socialist at heart, so I really believe in social intervention. It's this idea that everybody should have something for free. That's where my issue is. And if you look at the economy and how much money the economy is generating, it looks as if there's about 70% relying on 30% of the population. When you look at healthcare, when you look at everything, there's literally about 70% of the population who are just sitting there waiting for 30 to be taxed and then come and look after them. I mean, it would break down. At some time, it will break.
Well, if a smaller percentage of the population is shouldering the burden for the greater, the majority, I think it can never be sustainable under any shape. But then I also go back to means testing. Who should qualify? We should establish some of these things. We can talk about even transportation, where we're going to give we allow certain people. For instance, there was a time that maybe we had school children, and now we're talking about giving the pensioners opportunities to ride on buses for free. These must be based, it's not every pensioner who is poor. We shouldn't give it to every pensioner, but we must give it to people who really need it. Those who can afford might even ride in their cars, they may be chauffeur driven. But the essence is that we shouldn't make it mass. We should establish who should get it and who shouldn't. If you're able to do that, then I believe sincerely those who can, there will be the middle group, there will be those at the bottom. Maybe those at the bottom must be supported, but we shouldn't put the burden on just a few. Most of us should bear the burden, at least if we can afford.
Kwegu. We're all happy that, I mean, if you're in business or and you're going to be getting all this tax relief, it's like Christmas. And for those maybe those who missed out on the intro, let me just quickly recap. If Nanadu becomes president, I'm sure Kweku will be very close to the finance ministry. So reducing corporate tax from 25% to 20%. Reducing import duty on raw materials and machinery for production within the context of ECOWAS Common External Tariff Protocol. Abolishing special import levy. Abolishing 17.5% on imports on machines not produced in the country. Abolishing 17.5% on VAT on financial services. Abolishing 5% on real estate sales. VAT on fixes, abolishing 17.5 VAT on domestic airline tickets, reducing VAT for micro and small enterprises from the current 17.5% to 3% flat, as introduced by the Kufuor-led NPP government. Introducing tax credit and other incentives for businesses that hire young graduates from tertiary institutions, and reviewing withholding tax imposed on various sectors, including the mining sector, that have constrained liquidity on many businesses. Once you have done all this, I mean, that's a huge chunk of your revenue gone. But then on the back of this, you know, you're going to pay nurses and pay everybody. I mean, aren't you, playing with fire? Well, you come back and say, look, the previous government did this so much, so we are unable to give what we have promised?
We would deliver. We would deliver on all the promises we have made.
The numbers are good?
The numbers are good. And I'll explain that briefly. First, we need to look at the context. The country now is spending far more than we are generating. So our expenditures are exceeding increasingly our inflows or in our income, let's say, as a country. So how has this government been dealing with this difficulty? The government has been seeking to correct, to finance the gap, to find money for the gap by taxation. So government keeps taxing and taxing and has imposed all kinds of taxes. The consequence is that the business people who will generate economic activity and use and pay part of their money to government as revenue, so that government would be upping its revenue, those business people have been suffering. And especially in the last 4 years under the President Mahama administration, when these companies have been subjected to doomsor, erratic power supply, high interest rates, because government has been struggling with businesses for credit from the banks. So businesses have to borrow at very high rates, between 32% and 45%. I'm quoting Bank of Ghana figures. The result is that business is underperforming. It is the reason we don't have the jobs. I'm coming to your question shortly. It's the reason jobs have become so scarce and everybody is talking about unemployment. Everywhere you go, they tell you we need jobs. It is a reason. The companies that would expand, create economic activity and employ people are suffering. Now, what is the solution? We have been saying this, especially in the last 4 years, that the way to deal with your expenditures is, one, to cut the waste and the corruption in those expenditures, and two, to relieve those businesses and individuals who are supposed to generate economic activity, to empower them by giving them space, to say that keep more of the money you generate to increase economic activity. As they do that, they themselves will be paying more taxes. As they do that, they will employ people, you lessen unemployment. Those who are employed would pay tax. That is how you deal with the gap. But this, respectfully, this lazy way of our tax, forgetting that if you government think you are broke, the businesses are more broke than you government. So what are we going to do as NPP? What we are saying is that we will give all these tax incentives. They are not freebies as you would want people to, as you suggested. I know you didn't, you meant well. But they are not just freebies. They are empowerment. They are facilities and enabling tools you are placing in the hands of businesses so that they can generate more economic activity to deal with unemployment and also to help raise revenue. So these tax incentives you see like that, I know time would not permit us. We can take them one after the other, and I'll explain the strategic objective we are seeking to achieve by every tax item that we have tagged here. And so broadly, what we are saying is that, yes, we will reduce these taxes as a way of helping the private sector. They will generate economic activity. They would lessen the unemployment. They would help government up its revenue. It is only when you can do that that you say you are managing an economy well. We are determined to do it. We have looked at the figures closely. We think, apart dealing with the taxes, checking the waste. You go to the Auditor General's report, you see the wastage. All our procurements now are sole sourcing. When I say all, I mean all. All the big projects, Kwame Nkrumah interchange, the Ameri deal, the Car Power deal, every Kaswa interchange, every single big project in this country was giving out sole sourcing. What is sole sourcing? 1 minute, let me deal with this subject. You see, traditionally, if you want to buy tomatoes, you go to the market, you ask this tomato seller, you ask the next one, you ask the next one. You see, of the three, whose tomatoes are good looking, but at the same time are fairly priced. And then you make a choice. That wisdom has been imported into governance. And we say, if you government, you want to procure, invite competitors, let them come and tell you what they can deliver and how much the rate at which they can deliver those projects. And then the law, the Public Procurement Act, just plays a small window that there might be emergency situations. That's June 3 disaster. Government needs to procure immediately to save lives. So the law says, under those difficult circumstances, you are allowed to do sole sourcing. Or it may well be that what you require, only one producer can offer it. So you are allowed to do sole sourcing. When you have a bad, corrupt government, as we have now, what they do is that they turn sole sourcing into the norm. And all these big projects I'm mentioning have been done through international sole sourcing. And so people, instead of advertising for competitors to come, government officials go to lock themselves up in some office with the one vendor. Then they engage, they come out, they say, oh, this is how much the vendor said they would take. We think it is good price. And then when the vendors have delivered the projects and they get paid, they buy cars for government officials, and when they say this is not bribe. What I'm saying is this: if we would deal with the waste and cut taxation and create room for the private sector to deliver, and we benefit from the full potential of the private sector, I tell you, we would break the gap, and the need even for the excessive borrowing we are doing now would be removed. That is a strategy. We are confident it would work, and we're determined to make it work.
Let me, at the moment, you've put in place how much borrow we have done and how much interest we pay, and literally, every money we make goes to pay for loan interest. I mean, when you come into government, you still have to pay all these loans. So what do you do then? Because the economy you have painted that you are inheriting, quote unquote, you are coming to inherit. If in case you inherit it, what then do you do? We're going to turn around and tell us, well, that the previous government borrowed too much, so we have to go and pay it. How do you manage this economy if it's in that bad shape as you?
It is in bad shape, and it is not just NPP saying it. We can all feel it. When you go out there, you talk to people, they tell you times are hard. When you see government running to the IMF for a bailout, when you see government borrowing, then now interest payment that you mentioned has overtaken capital expenditure. That is to say, the money we are putting into roads and schools and all those things is now less than the money we are using to pay the interest. It's not just the loan itself. The interest around the loan is bigger. So it is because government has condemned itself to raising money through taxation and then borrowing. Once you create a business friendly, that's what I'm coming to. Our strategy is to take the focus off taxation as a way of developing a country to growth. That is to say, you leave money in the hands of private players so that they can expand the economy. When that happens, a lot of the things get corrected by themselves. For instance, because the private sector is expanding, they're creating jobs. More people are going to pay taxes to government. Now, the private sector that is supposed to be the engine of growth then takes its rightful position. Government expenditure then lessens. So you have room to deal with your debt issues, but more importantly, going forward, you are not under pressure to go and compete with your private sector for capital, for both, say, to go and compete with your private sector at the local bank saying, give me the loan instead of the private sector because me, government, I'm broke. When your private sector is in distress, you go to banks and say they should rather lend the money to you, government. When you do that, your private sector runs into problem. Your revenues will continue to underperform. And then at the slightest shock, you come back to Parliament and say, we are cutting expenditure to pensioners. That is what the last media review did. We're saying that this economic strategy of borrow and tax, it's wrong. I find it very hard to see how government thinks that they can tax their way out of economic crisis. What you do rather is to create room for economic actors to play their rightful role in the development of the economy. And all the ills you are talking about would be addressed one after the other because government is under less pressure to borrow. You've given the private sector room, economic activity expand. Instead of the deterioration in economic activity we have seen, especially under the Mahama administration, you correct that, and many of the worries you have would not be there. Especially if we will deal with these procurement issues and the waste in the public sector, we will more than generate enough to say we're going to restore teacher trainee and nursing trainee allowances. Why? Because I do not think that the support that is given to the teacher trainees and nursing trainees is some freebies. is a strategic line put in our budget statements to ensure that we develop the manpower that going forward will help us run this country. If you withdraw these and we spend rather the money, or you hear bars branding, you hear this, you hear this, you hear this, and you ask, what really are the priorities? The priorities we've gotten wrong, I am sure, if we will do the things I've mentioned. Ghana, we are not a poor country, as Nanado keeps saying. It is mismanagement that has brought us here.
I'll come back to you. Let me go to Frederick. Of all the parties, I haven't heard anybody very, very, very strong on environment. I don't know. I have not seen anybody strong on environment, particularly Galamsey, destruction of water bodies, depletion of forest. It's like a touch and go. And then everybody's going heavy on the jobs. But one day we'll have jobs and no water to drink. I don't know. What can they do, or what can be done?
Well, I think there is no political will on that grounds. I've not heard of this issue. No one is talking about the environment, as I would have expected.
Respectfully, when he's finished answering, I think you give me the chance to answer this question, because I have a manifesto here.
Yes.
And I think I can explain. Okay, I understand the concerns you have.
I know that you are not too happy with this, but the fact of the matter is that we are getting into crisis with our water bodies. Look at all our big rivers, the Pras, the Hofin, they are, just travel from here to Takrady, and you see the Pra River, and you weep. It's golden. The color is actually golden. If you go to the Dunkwa areas, the Hofin is virtually gone. It's no more a flowing river. These are serious issues that I think we must address our minds to. And the parties may have environmental issues, but Galamsey, why are we afraid to address Galamsey? Especially when you look at it, I've listened to a number of documentaries. I mean, Joy FM, Joy, and you've done quite a number of that. Other stations are doing a lot of documentaries, and some of them, you listen to them or you watch them, you want to cry. But we're not taking bold steps to address this problem.
Really, could the truth not be? Because the last time, the estimates were that there were 2 million people involved in Galamsey. 2 million. I mean, that's 2 million potential voters plus their wives and everything. I mean, if you touch them, how do you get power?
No, the fact of the matter is that if we are going to be afraid to touch something which is going to kill us in future, now you listen to the Ghana Water Company, and they tell you the volume of alum they use in treating the water. It is frightening. And we must start looking at this issue and face it headlong, because we might say that people are not in employment, so they are engaged in armed robbery. Maybe we have some Robin Hoods around who say, oh, we are robbing people to even look after other communities. Would that be a fair point? Fact of the matter is that it is not sustainable. And the worst bit to this whole, particularly Galamsey, issue is the number of foreigners who are behind some of these operations with the connivance of some of our people. And unfortunately, not some of your traditional colleagues. You would have expected them to have stood behind their own peoples. Now farmlands are being lost, water bodies are being lost. Mind you, we are depleting our forest reserves. So all these things are happening, and I think we must rise up to this major challenge. This doesn't go particularly. I'm not taking on the NPP Manifesto.
That is fine.
We are looking at the current national problem we are facing in this country relative to Galamsey particularly, and other environment. We can talk about other environmental issues, especially in our urban settings too. We need to tackle the level of filth that is engulfing us. It's shameful that we live in this country. And now look at, we have beach resources. Start from Teshi and end at Lefe thereabout, these could have been developed into wonderful places that you could go and relax with your family or with business partners. How well are we using these resources? We go to Brazil and we want to go and sit at the Copacabanas and enjoy and be happy and have fanfare and all those things. Can't we do more than that here, right here in Accra? And from Keta to Axim, we can put so many hotels and people will come just to come and lie on our beaches and enjoy it. But yet we're not making, all because of our environmental problems that we have. So indeed, we need to look at the environmental thing. I've seen something interesting in the NPP Manifesto talking about establishing an environmental sanitation fund to support the national sanitation. That's a good step. I would have recommended that we also need, you see, we have this National Sanitation Day. And a lot of people don't participate because they are under no obligation to participate in even the one day in a week that we have to go in a month, sorry. So I would have wished that the assemblies don't have the bylaws that will support them to prosecute people who fail to participate in this. If we can pass one law that makes the National Sanitation Day obligatory on people, and that if you don't participate, you can find and we can apply these things. And I think this is an issue that we need to look at. It can complement what we want to do concerning the sanitation fund.
Let me take a break so that I don't rush you. So when I come, so you can take your time and deal with it, because as for environment is serious. Even though I brought you here for economy, I'll let you touch on the environment a bit, and then we'll go back to the economy. So we're going straight back, and we'll go quick break. And when we come back, we'll tackle the Galamsey issue before we come back to the economy. Don't move. Well, thank you very much for staying. And since it's a season for campaigning, I'm also campaigning. PM Express, well, we've been nominated for Best Current Affairs Show Host of the Year for RTP. So I am campaigning for your vote. And kindly just pick up your phone and then you send RTP Nana Nsakwao TCTV to 1446. RTP Nana Nsakwao TC TV to 1446. And the same, been nominated for Best Talk Show Host on Radio as well. So it's the same, RTP Nana Nsakwao TS Radio. And then the short code for all networks is 1446. And then the last category is overall personality, radio and TV personality. So that's RTP Nana Nsakwao RTP to 1446. If you vote for me, I'll vote for you.
Okay, I'll vote for you. Why not? I will.
If you vote for me, I'll vote for you. So this one is a bargain. But let's come back on
back to the environment. Now we do have the environmental action plan, and within that plan, there's a National Environmental Protection Program, and there are procedures. If you look at the EPA Act and the regulations that followed, there are devices in there with which we should have checked, especially the kind of galamsey that we see foreigners do, and that so badly damage our water bodies and our landscape. We have to concede that this galamsey and this is a destructive impact on the environment did not start with just this NDC administration. We need to be honest about that. It had always been there somewhat. What is worrying is the escalation. I don't want to mention the nationals of any country, it is not fair, but we all know that in the last particularly 4 or 5 years, there has been escalation of foreigners in small-scale artisanal mining. Now, that is unlawful. Foreigners are not allowed to do that. And we ought to ask ourselves, what are the law enforcement agencies doing? If you say something unpleasant, the next time the BNI picks you up, you insult the president, the BNI picks you up. These security agencies, when they see these foreigners doing the small-scale mining reserved for Ghanaians, why are we not able to deal with it? That is something we need to it's a question we need to ask. I think it is because, as he said, there are many people in important places who have undercover dealings with many of these illegal foreign, especially foreign galamsey, small-scale miners. And it is important that at the highest political level, this matter is addressed and dealt with. Fear must be put into the ministers and senior people in government that if there was the slightest suspicion that you are involved with this kind of illegal business, that the president will act against you. Unless that signal goes clearly, you're never going to have people stand up to do what they have to do. That's the first. The second point is that artisanal small-scale mining is by Ghanaians is permissible under our laws. It is permissible, and sometimes, especially coming from a mining community where many people do galamsey, I am uncomfortable at the suggestion that small-scale artisanal mining is unlawful. It is not. The law allows it. Now,
but you dare not say you're not happy with it because they will vote you out of power. But you know they will never reclaim the land. They can't reclaim the land.
I'm coming.
The amount of gold you get is not enough to repair the damage they do.
It's
not.
Let me.
It's not. The amount of damage that they have caused. I mean, do you think they can repair the PRA? Unless the PRA itself, if it's not damaged beyond repairs, does its own repair. But they don't have the means to repair.
If you look at the damage that is caused, you see, as I've already indicated, when I was a little boy growing up in the streets of Obuasi, people did galamsey. And there was a way of gathering earth from the surface of the earth. Of course, they did touch some water bodies. But the kind of small-scale mining that especially the foreigners do with heavy machinery, that is what we are crying about right now. And when you go to see, and I see it in many parts of our land now, I see it in many parts of my constituency. When you see that, the damage is not coming from the small-scale artisanal miners. No. They are responsible for some pollution because the mercury they work with pollutes water. And so, but what people are complaining about now, the degradation you see with heavy machinery, is those machineries cannot be afforded by our small-scale artisanal miners. But I just wanted to make this distinction that there are laws, there are environmental policies, we have the EPA Act, we have from it regulations with which if we want to deal with this, we can't deal with it. But let's be careful the way we talk about artisanal mining. And let me tell you what our strategies are.
2 million people digging up, and it's too much. It's not that it's illegal, but there's just too many people digging, and everybody's saying,
the strategy is to find ways of, if you like, formalizing the operations of these small-scale miners, so that you can help them do small-scale mining in a more environmentally friendly way. Now, I think that is not too difficult. The reason you think it's so difficult is because you are looking at the damage, the serious damage caused by small-scale. It's corporate. You see them with big machines, and these are big. We should not confuse them with the artisanal miners. What I'm saying is that those ones done by foreigners we must deal with. Once you have a controllable number of people in that kind of small-scale mining, this time I'm not talking about the artisanal. It is still small-scale mining when you use machinery, except that the foreigners are not allowed to do it. If we were to deal with this foreigner issue, foreigners in small-scale mining, if we were to deal with that, and the remaining Ghanaians in that business can easily be regulated. And then the small-scale artisanal miners, what we need to do is to help them regularize the operations and make sure that they are able to earn their living in a more environmentally friendly way. And again, that is not hard to achieve because these artisanal miners, trust me, the degradation they can cause to the environment is limited. And so it is not that they don't degrade the environment at all, but I'm saying that the damage they cause to the environment is limited, they can be controlled, they can be checked. Where we have problems is with those small scale. And I'll conclude by reading for you, and it is because you did indicate that we are not talking about it. The NPP Manifesto has just been launched. As time goes on, we'll be discussing various aspects of the manifesto, and I'm sure you would see that many of the areas have been covered. On page 94, we have a whole subsection, small-scale mining, and this is what we say. It is a view, it's the NPP's view, that the artisanal small-scale mining subsector needs restructuring so that its activities can take place within guidelines set up under the appropriate regulations, and those regulations are there already. This will enable small-scale miners to work and earn their livelihoods in a regulated, secure, and lawful environment. By this process, the environment, especially our water bodies, can be protected, and degraded land can be reclaimed through tree planting and reforestation. In summary, what we are saying is that the action plan is there, the laws are there, the regulations are there. Somehow, we are not applying them now. We should use them to deal with the illegal small-scale mining, especially by foreigners. That is something that if it will be necessary to engage with the embassies and governments of these foreign nationals who are here. It is worth doing that, because if things continue as they are doing, a time is going to come, there will be no farmlands. So that is something we must deal with head on. It must not be treated as part of the usual small-scale mining problems we have. It will have to be dealt with even diplomatically. So you handle that one at that level. With the small-scale artisanal miners, as I have indicated, our objective is to help regularize the operations so that they can do more decent mining. Those of them that would not want to do acceptable small-scale mining will have to be checked in accordance with law. But clearly, we have thought through this, and the feedback we got when we were consulting with various stakeholders and the public in preparing our manifesto, the feedback we got was that, especially from mining communities, this was a matter of great concern. Many people do not understand why. Recently, there were people from the military dispatched to areas where you have many of these foreigners doing galamsey, machinery were seized, and somehow, small, all these have been given back to their owners. Nobody is checking anybody again. And instead of broadening it and just saying that they're degrading the environment and we ought to be doing something about it, I think that we ought to be asking people specific questions. The Minister for Lands and Natural Resources, we ought to ask him that the government policy to send security people to deal with these foreigners, seize their machine, what happened to it? People must answer these questions head on so that going forward, we'll be able to know what strategies work and what strategies don't work.
Let me bring Frederick in here. Frederick, you see, this policy that we just read, if there were, let's say, 20,000 small-scale miners, 50,000 from the north all the way down to Axim, it's fine. Bring them together, manage them. 2 million, it's almost an industry. I mean, it's almost an industry, and it's a
big one at that.
It's a big one at that, and it's a dangerous one. So you have 2 million people all pitching camp by some stream, river, everything, saying that we're going to regularize them to do what? To dig more or to undig? You need to cut it down by about 90%. For any sustainability, it needs to be cut down by about 90%. Otherwise, I mean, very soon we won't have any rivers.
My view about this galamsey issue is that, like the Honorable said, I believe that if indeed they can cut off what the foreigners are doing for a start, because they are in the rivers, deep in the rivers. Indeed,
using big machinery.
One of the things I asked myself, how did they bring in some of those machines into the country? I have a colleague, and for reasons I won't mention where he is.
You see, but
he sent me a videotape about some mining activities in some part of the Sefi areas, and I was amazed. He is working with an NGO, and he calls me every now and then for my views about his activities. He comes down for some of our training at the institute, and he sent it to me, and I said, how can can this be? And there is a police commander, there are chiefs, and even how did they get the machine through from Tema, or what, if it was in Takoradi, through all the checks, and they got it onto the river? And yet, we are looking at some of these. These are some of the key challenges that we have.
What happens to law enforcement?
If it comes to some of the people engaged in Galamsey, especially our own people, I've listened to documentaries where people were talking about, look, I need money to fund my education. I've come here for 6 months. If I get the money I need, I'll go back and continue. That is why we come back to some of the social interventions that we keep talking about. So maybe part of it is for us to make it a national, we should declare Galamsey as a national crisis. Then we should come around and look at it holistically, because there are various components to it. Some people genuinely want jobs to do, and they find it, they go in, they get some money, it helps them. Some even want to get money to travel abroad. You'll be surprised. So they go in for a short period, get the money they need, and they leave the industry. But people keep going back to it. So there must be a holistic approach to it.
Jumping straight back to the economy. Listening to your arguments, instead of front-loading the tax, you allow the space so that you tax at the back end, which I think is nobody's going to dispute that. But how long would it take for things to level? Would it take you a term, 2 terms? Because you know what's happening now. You've told us, how bad things are. They borrowed there, they borrowed here, they borrowed there, and now, assuming we come into power and we put out all these implementations, what can you tell Ghanaians that, listen, you need to give us 3 years, or you need to give 2 years for us to level things out? Because I like the way you put the question. It suggests that perhaps we want to get to a certain point and stop. No. Ultimately, we want Ghana to be like just any other industrialized country. So we would never finish. We will continue doing it for as long as we live. But I understand your question. You're saying you perhaps want to know that if you're going to allow space, then perhaps it's expected that the private sector will take some time to grow. We have no choice. Whatever it takes, and however long it takes, that is the only strategy that works. Oh no, but you cannot, after because 3 years in government or 4 years in government,
never going to say that.
Say that, oh, the previous government,
At all, we will never say that. What I'm saying is that that strategy, there's no compromise on it. It's the way to go. Because the alternative has been tried. We're in the alternative. Just keep up these taxes, and the result is failure. We have to turn back. So, the how long, I'll answer it like this. I did indicate 2 things we would do. First, we need to deal with the waste. The procurement issue have to be dealt with. That will start from day one. And you'll be surprised how much savings we can make if we are committed to it, even in the first 1 year. So, that would provide some relief in itself. 2, some of the tax relief that we are promising, they will yield results immediately. And let me give you one example. If you go to the aviation industry, the planes that come here and they go, they use aviation fuel. Let's look at the price of aviation fuel in Ghana and in the surrounding countries. In Nigeria, aviation fuel is $2.30. In Nigeria, $2.30. So 2.3, if you like, $2.3. In Benin, it's the same, $2.3. In Cameroon, it's $1.94. Cameroon. In Ghana, it's 3.14. Now, what is government's strategy here? Government thinks that, if you make aviation fuel so expensive here by putting on taxes, then when they buy the fuel, you get a lot of profit. And then that is how you improve your finances. But look at the consequence. The consequence is that Virgin Atlantic has stopped flying to Ghana. United Airlines has stopped flying to Ghana. Alitalia has stopped. Iberia has stopped. Lufthansa, South African Airlines, they have all stopped coming to Ghana because it is too expensive to operate here. Now, for airlines like Emirates that are still here, you know what they do? You know they pick people from Cote d'Ivoire too. So they drop their people in Ghana, they get to Cote d'Ivoire, then they fail. If they have to do anything in Ghana, it's just some top up. So we are sitting here thinking that we are smart, and we've jacked up the price, and the business is leaving us. I tell you, if you drop the taxes on aviation fuel, and the price comes down, and the airlines start failing from Ghana, the result would be immediate, because you see clearly that the volumes would increase, and you just get more revenue. This is something we have been mentioned. I've mentioned this several times in Parliament. We keep talking about this, that it's a failed policy.
Is it the same as the VAT, taking the VAT off the domestic airlines?
Yes, it will affect it. But there might be specific interventions in areas like this where you see that you are not competitive. And the point is that you want more money because of your price. It's like two women selling, say, wache by the roadside. This woman's wache is very expensive, and the reason she sells that way is that she wants to make more money. The next woman's wache is far less expensive, and a lot of people go there. So the volumes alone will make that woman get more profit. The illusion that if I make the wache so expensive, I'll get more money is the problem of this government. And I don't know why. So whenever I have met government officials, and in the past I've met a couple of them, it's not fair to mention their names, but I point to them. So are you not concerned that Virgin, United Airlines, they are all leaving this country? They are telling you that aviation fuel is too expensive in this country. Are you not going to do anything about it? And the response is that, oh, they are not leaving because of the aviation price. The people who are leaving are telling you that aviation fuel is too expensive in your country. So in answer to your question, I'm saying that many of these taxes, once they are reduced, the dividends, what you reap from it, would be far faster than you're making it, you're thinking. And I think we can do it. The last point I want to make in respect of these arguments too is that the multiplier effect, and we saw this under the previous Kufuor administration. When 2001 we came, corporate tax was 32%. And when we were running that election, we did say that once we won, we would reduce corporate tax to 25%. And we got the same responses, that if you reduce corporate taxes, where are you going to get money to fulfill the promises that you have made? And we told Ghanaians that we are confident that if we reduce corporate tax and we left more money in the hands of the private sector, they will generate economic activity and help us raise revenue. Many doubted us, but when we did, you go and look at corporate tax, even in the first 2 years, and you see how it jumped up. Sometimes you must signal to business that you are a friendly government. This attitude where government sees business as some kind of competitors or enemies, and every policy is intended to squeeze everything out of business, is just the wrong strategy. And NPP, we've been watching this. We thought it was bad. We did say it. Government did not mind us. Now we are seeing the consequences. We are more confident than ever that we are right when we told them at the beginning of the administration that this tax is not the way to go. Now we feel very vindicated. We are ready to do the right things. And we promise Ghanaians, Ghana is not a poor country. We can turn things around.
Well, Ghana's not a poor country and things will be turned around. So I'm sure by this time you have made your own deductions. But all too soon, how time flies when the conversation is so exciting. But let me remind you, it's 024-366-2001. Give Tanti's Fashions a call. They give me the shirts for my show, and I know you guys have been calling them. 024-366-2001. Call them, get yourself a nice shirt for yourself. But I want to say thank you very much to Frederick and thank you to Kweku for coming here. It's been an interesting, and I know this is just part probably 1A, and it's going to continue. More discussions to come on the NPP Manifesto. So watch this space. Thank you very much. Tomorrow we'll be back to do this all over again. Thank you guys.